Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lost Coast podcast. Today, we got a very special guest with us. Her name is Susie DeVille, and she's the founder and CEO of Innovation Creativity Institute and the author of Buoyant, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Becoming a Wildly Successful and Creative and Free. Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, so give us a little background on how you got started in this, and how you founded your company.
Sure. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. And so those seeds were planted when I was probably about 12 or 13. And then I took a rather circuitous path through the world of the humanities, the financial industry, the publishing industry, nonprofit leadership and management, and then landed in the world of real estate. And that put me firmly on the path of entrepreneurship. And I now have, I can't believe I'm going to say this, over 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur.
Don't give everything away at one time. No,
Oh
that's
my
great.
gosh.
That's great. So, so tell us a little bit. So, you've been in that kind of situation. What are some of the key points, though, when, like you say, you were young, that really brought it to the forefront that you knew that you were going to be somewhere in this realm of work?
I loved watching how much my dad loved what he did. And I didn't have an interest in opening a retail enterprise, which is what he had, but I loved how creative he could be every single day. No day was like the one prior or the one after. And he was able to bring his love of art and creativity and customer service and customer experiences into his enterprise, and was a person of enormous autonomy and grace. And I thought, that looks amazing to me. I would like to do that. I had no clue, of course, at the beginning what the roller coaster ride would entail. And certainly the roller coaster kind of went off the rails in 2008 when the markets crashed. And I entered into my nuclear winter period, which lasted for about 5 years. But it was that dark time that put me on the path that I'm on now. So while it wasn't my favorite experience of all time, I'm enormously grateful for it because it changed how I approach and live my life, as well as how I pursue the creation and the care of my business.
Yeah, that's the thing about being an entrepreneur, is that sometimes you got to get really low to really find out what your next step is, and that's I think the key that most entrepreneurs don't understand is don't ever give up. Keep going. You're so close to being where you need to be that most of them give up ahead of time and then go back to the daily grind instead of staying in the moment of where they're at the time. So tell us how that struggle, we understand, you went through. So you're there, you've learned those situations, and now you're here today with us. And what is it today that you want to share with us? That's the your creative institute that you're in.
Sure. So for anyone right now who is on either a financial gurney or an emotional one, or someone who is feeling very overwhelmed and frustrated and stuck in their business, or is kind of contemplating making a transition and you're scared out of your mind, I want to assure you that the things that our culture tells us, which is in order to be successful, we have to focus on productivity, managing our time, having lots of discipline, and sleeping when we're dead. My complete message for everyone is that you will find the path out of the place where you are right now. And the path that's going to take you there is not through those methods that culture tells us will take us there. That will only serve to dig you further into a hole. However, if you embrace a counterintuitive set of practices, which is to really play more, inspire yourself more, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, and have a few things that you do every single morning to kind of reset your central nervous system and connect you into your intuition, your business and your life absolutely turn around, and it doesn't take that long. So let me explain what inspiration means.
Please.
The way that we tend to think about it is, oh, it's the light bulb over the head moment. That is not what I'm referring to. I'm taking a page out of author Paulo Coelho's book, which is to literally breathe in, inspire ourselves with beauty, art, nature, being with people we love, doing what brings us alive. All of those things tend to be things that we kind of put on the back burner when we are working so hard as entrepreneurs. And those are the very things that fill our well with a kind of topped off tank of energy, which will propel our willingness to go into the unknown and tolerate uncertainty, where we can take bold action and pursue the life and the design of our business in the way that we wish. But when we are depleted and burned out and clinging to this notion that we have to suffer in order to be successful, that's where we will stay. But if we can flip this switch and know that there is a different way, once we inspire ourselves, we can now do a practice like morning pages or making something or moments of inspired learning, all of which I go over in my book. But you can start with just one thing and you can build on a practice. We don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and have a 3-hour morning practice. You can take one thing, journaling, for example, and do that for 5 minutes. And you can begin to see how it works on you like a fine grit spiritual sandpaper, which connects you to your best thinking, your problem solving, your imagination, your ideas. And now all of a sudden you feel a lot more calm and a lot more centered and confident.
Interesting. I mean, we've always put it in the financial world, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And then and work from there. Yeah, no, excellent. So when people work with you and you help them through all this, I mean, kind of give us the idea of, what they're going to expect day to days. I mean, this is an issue a lot of people have, like you say. I mean, so give us an example of if when somebody reaches out to you, what's the kind of the process you're going to go through with them?
The first thing that we do is have a 30-minute free consultation call so I can really try to dig in to what somebody's situation is and make some suggestions based upon what they're telling me initially as to how we can proceed. If it's very clear that this is a person who is going to absolutely need and benefit from one-on-one coaching, that's the direction that we'll take. If that's the direction, then I have a very in-depth questionnaire that people fill out, which in and of itself starts the healing process. If someone seems to be in need of a community or a little bit of a sort of less focused or intense coaching experience, then I'll suggest one of my master classes or one of my live courses where we have a workshop and we do all kinds of different creativity exercises, or even just a free webinar, depending upon where they are. And what this whole journey is this sort of archaeological dig of the self. whether you're a one-on-one client or in one of my group classes. And what we're trying to get at is what it is that is authentically you and what is everybody else. So we want to be clear and conscious and aware of what expectations are from others and how we can now be very astute in setting boundaries and reclaiming ourselves, kind of taking ourselves home to ourselves. So this journey is one of removing what is not us and surfacing what our soul is craving so badly, just desperate for. And so it depends upon the engagement, but someone can have an experience that's several hours long, all the way to many years long, because what happens is that people get to a new level, scale their enterprise, and need another layer because there's new mindset work at the new level, or they want an experience overseas. I do VIP coaching in Europe. So it just depends upon what someone is seeking, but everything is very customized and very very much co-created with the client. So everyone always has an opportunity to weigh in on how they particularly want to shape the kinds of things that we cover.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. It's always that stepping stone to getting yourself better and better and better. I had a gentleman one time, we were having a discussion. He says, success is the next failure because there's always another success above that. So it was kind of deep. I was kind of like, God, that's kind of a rough way of looking at it, but it made a lot of sense at the time, you know? So, and I hate to call success a failure, but he was just saying you need to keep pushing forward was basically what he was saying, and growing yourself and always growing, you know, the mission that you're on.
Well, and I will say I support people who want to do that. I also support people who say, I don't have to keep evolving. I don't have to go to um 10 million in sales. I'm great at 5 with 3 months in Europe every year. So how do I design my enterprise for that? And I can totally do that because that is what my area of expertise is to help you unlock what's magic and fabulous and delicious for you and set the strategy to get you there and help you remove and overcome any of the mindset obstacles or habits that you might have that are getting in your way.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. So if the listeners here are listening, go, man, I like what Susie has to say here. You know, I'd love to get that free consultation, if nothing else. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can go to my website, which is innovationandcreativityinstitute.com. And from there, you can sign up to receive my free toolkit for entrepreneurs. You can set up an appointment for that free consultation. You can connect with me on social. So it all kind of starts there. And just reach out to let me know what I can do to help you.
Perfect. Perfect. Give us kind of an example of a client that you've helped, that you've walked them through the system, so they can kind of get an idea of what happened there, you know, and where they started and where they're at now.
I had a gal a couple of years ago who is, well, at the time she was 52. She had been an entrepreneur. I believe it was her 7th year, and she was very successful. She kind of woke up one day noticing that the color from her life seemed to have drained completely and that she was living this kind of gray, dull experience. She also started feeling disconnected from her enterprise, and she noticed that what she used to do to attract clients and also up level existing ones was not working as well anymore. So you can kind of already start to guess what's happening here. The personal life satisfaction was had begun to dip before the enterprise was seeing the negative impacts of that. And she was not even aware how much the personal situation was impacting her business. She came to me and said, "Look, I just want to scale my enterprise, take it to the next level." And it was this conversation and this questionnaire process and all the things that I do before I even begin working with the client, where I could spot immediately that she didn't even really want to scale her enterprise to the degree that she was asking for. She wanted a rejuvenated life. And the first thing that came to her was more money.
Okay.
um, but and that's great. But what she was really after was more satisfaction and more fulfillment and more soul and more passion and more fun and joy. So we began working together. And one of the first things that I did was hand her a beautiful custom designed bag that was filled with creativity supplies. And she just about reached across the table and strangled me with this bag because she just was so programmed by cultural messaging and how she was brought up that creativity was for people who are retired, people who have time to kill, for kids, certainly not a hard charging entrepreneur. This has nothing to do with me. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So, and this is very common. I imagine people who are listening right now are probably saying the same things. That training runs so deep, it's hard to believe initially that when we flip the switch and the script, that all of a sudden success and freedom find us. We don't have to keep chasing it so hard. So I was able to coax her into believing that she could trust me to do this work together. And she begrudgingly started to do this sort of series of practices. And we met a month later, and she just about ran me over on the middle of the sidewalk because she was so excited. She said, "You're not going to believe what's happened." I mean, I said, "Yes, I would, but let's do tell." Um, she had begun to sleep better. She didn't even mention in our first conversations how absolutely exhausted she was. She was resting and sleeping like she did 20 years prior. She had begun bringing things back into her life that she stopped doing when the business got too busy. She began reconnecting with herself via some very simple morning practices, and she was improving her health as a result of that. The business, interestingly, had begun to attract very high level clients, fewer people, higher margin, which is ideal, right? There's not so much noise, there's not so much inbound. She was doing the work that she loved, and she had more time off to do these other fun things. She would take an afternoon, she would bring her sketchbook, go to a cafe, take herself on a walk, all these things that she would never have done. This is only a month, and she was enjoying radical change. About a year later, she ended up selling her enterprise for an incredible return. And she is currently, I think she's currently in the south of France, getting ready to go to Italy. And she travels quite a bit now. But she is a perfect example of someone who went from this kind of dull gray existence to one of spectacular, multicolor, technicolor living. And the path through that process was really about releasing this need to overachieve and work herself to a nub and embrace rest and play and doing what she loves.
Nice. That's a great story. I mean, kind of, and I can relate. I did it once in my lifetime, in my career. You get that down, and then in your personal life, and it really heavily affects your business. I was fortunate enough to have pulled out of it, to make it all work. Thank you for people that were working with me. And that's great you were there to support her and that you found out. I mean, a lot of people just kind of give the advice, suck it up, keep
Oh
pushing.
my, oh, it's just that I will tell you, there's a big difference between persistence and sucking it up. So I hope that people will set a boundary, which is I will do what is necessary to affect the change or to get the result that I'm after. But I don't have to lose myself or overwork myself or wreck my health or my relationships in order to get it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Give us a little insight on this buoyant piece that you have.
Yes, so this was such a lovely adventure writing this book because when I was in the throes of the ashes of my life after the markets crashed, I started to think about how I can redesign how I'm living and how I'm working. And I began to bring in this research that I had already been doing for about 5 years at that point on innovation and creativity. So I brought in this information, this data, this research. I also then had my own personal experience, and I was working with clients as a business coach as well as a life coach. But there was this other piece missing. And what happened was I began to intuit that there was this connection between making something and setting yourself free. And I didn't quite know what that was. So I began taking private lessons with an instructor, and we began sketching and doing watercolor. And then it all kind of came together, and I could understand that when I cross over this sort of threshold into this world of making something, the whole world sort of slips away, and I'm in a very different zone. I now know that the part of the brain that I'm in at that point is called the default mode network. It's what kind of comes online when we're in the shower or driving. And all of a sudden, these incredibly sort of beautiful ideas come out of nowhere. So I started to put it together that there was this connection between making something and tapping into my intuition and my problem solving and my imagination skills. And I began to test it more and more, and it became the body of work, which is in my book. And I tested it with clients. I tell stories about my clients. Of course, I'm not using their real names, but I tell my own journey as well as those of the entrepreneurs and the leaders with whom I have worked and taken them through this process. So if you want a step-by-step guide that's very fun and very playful, but also backed with a lot of evidence that it works, then this book is an opportunity for you to kind of do your own journey in your own time and in your own way. And if you want more help than that, of course, you're always welcome to go more deeply. But it's a kind of a way to get started. It's your break glass in case of emergency book. It's a way to sort of put the paddles on your chest and bring yourself back to life.
Interesting. And then where do we find this book at now?
The best place right now is Amazon. There are wonderful discounts being offered on Amazon right now for the book. I don't know how long those will last. If you don't prefer to buy through Amazon, you can get it through any bookseller that you wish. I just know that there's some pretty substantial discounts at the moment through that venue.
Well, excellent, excellent. That's awesome. It's just another avenue for people to actually take another step without actually, taking a smaller step, I guess. Get the book, do some research on it, read it. If they like it, then like, man, I got to call Susie. She could really help me here. And then they can work with you on a one-to-one basis too.
Yes, and I want to emphasize to folks when I first started doing this, I could only do 5 minutes a day. I was exhausted. I was filled with anxiety. I was just struggling to try to figure out how I was going to do the day. So I want people to feel that, if you get this book and you open it up to just wherever the page lands and you read a page and you let that just sort of soak in you, tomorrow maybe you can read two. Maybe you could take one exercise and spend 5 minutes working on it. But it is not something that you have to just force yourself to spend hours and hours doing in order for the benefit to be realized in your life. So don't feel like because resources and time and bandwidth are limited perhaps right now that you can't go ahead and get started and doing just a couple of little things.
Interesting. No, that's great. I've already got a client that I think that I'm going to actually purchase the book for and give it to them. I mean,
Oh, wonderful.
this would be a great asset to them, I think. So we really appreciate you being on the show today, Susie. We got some great insights. But before I close, I want to make sure that we cover everything that you kind of want to get the message out there for. So do you have any good little nuggets left that you want our audience to hear?
I do. So the thing that lights me up, one of the many things that lights me up is helping to set people free. And I want to just leave you with a tiny bit of research that shows that we should be resting 42% of the time in order for our brain to be at its best. I know when we do the math, that is about 40 hours. 10 hours per day. And so when we think about, okay, am I getting 7 hours of sleep? Where are these other 2 or 3 hours supposed to come from? The practices that I outline in the book, which I call the 5 M's, are a perfect way to help you rest your brain without trying to have to figure out new ways to do that on your own. So that's point number one. Point number two is when we protect our rest, we protect our energy. Energy is, in my opinion, where our focus should be, because without that, we don't make the changes that we want to make in our lives. We don't have the reserves of motivation and desire to keep going when things are a little bumpy and uncertain. So, more rest, protect your energy, and dive into an exploration of what brings you alive like nothing else and do more of that.
There you go. Seems pretty simple, but
It's
we all know it's not that simple.
It's simple, but not easy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Susie, we thank you for that. We're going to bring this to a close now. We want to thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your journey, and putting a light out there on, how people can go out there, help themselves, and get back to a better place in their life. We very appreciate that very much. And with that being said, this is the Lost Ghost Podcast, and we will be signing off, and we will see you all next time. Thank you so much. Bye.